thank you to this organization. Thank you for having me and sharing some time with me this morning, but thank you also for the Barcelona principles. They've changed my industry completely. I have a boutique agency. It's a small team, about 10 of us full-time, and we really focus on the strategic level and in crisis communication. And we preach and live by the principles, and we preach it to our clients from Aflac to the largest healthcare providing network in Alaska. But this organization and championing that made a huge difference in my profession. And I also want to thank Muckrack, not just for Greg and his team for supporting this summit, but also for being such a great partner to small and large firms. The resources and the partnership and the insights that you provide are tremendous, and they make a real difference in what we're able to do for our clients. So what I wanted to look at was, I looked at AI and how it's affecting your industry. We certainly are looking at it, how it affected ours. So what we're really looking at is how it affects the industry and the impact that it will have. I recently looked at this for one of the largest real estate brokerages in the United States and the largest in Louisiana, and how it was going to affect their business and their work. Very different. You know, AI for them, the real estate model is such that humanity is always a big part of it. You want to have a real estate agent that has walked through the house with you, has met with you, has seen your family, knows what they're looking for and what their needs are. And could I get the slide full size on the... Thank you so much. In the real estate, humanity is such a big part of it, and that's not going to change. It is going to change the way that industry works, but it's not the type of wholesale change that we're experiencing in the agency side or that you'll experience. For you all, it really is a tremendous disruption. That's what's going to happen. Some would say revolution, but disruption is really, I think, the right term. And the important thing to look at is right now, 87% of marketers are already using AI in some form, but only 6% have fully integrated it. And it's that area in between adoption and capability that the future really lies, I think, for your industry and for ours. It's a credibility crisis. And I'll tell you, this is especially true when you're talking about crisis and working with crisis management or mitigation and reputation management. The coin of the realm, the most important thing, is credibility. I say it's the coin of the realm because without that, you have nothing and you're lost. There are still vanity metrics. They're still being used. Too often, we're seeing sentiment misperceived as strategy. One of the real things to focus on, though, is we're seeing that clients are feeling that doubt. And when clients feel that the measurement is either too complex to understand or isn't reading the way they sense the reality is, what you lose immediately is credibility. And again, that's the coin of the realm. If you don't have credibility, you are lost. So what AI is doing is it's reshaping how everything's going to work. And it's in these areas of vulnerability, I think, that we all need to concentrate most. So it's this disruption of what the value of measurement is. And it's in the area where the greatest vulnerability, I think, for your industry is anything that is technical and repeatable. So it's anything they can automate. What you're also seeing is that where is that going to impact the most? It's going to impact staffing. It's going to be the entry level. It's going to be the mid-level employees or professionals that are are going to be replaced most. That should be concerning. And I'll tell you, it's something that we're looking at because it's absolutely true for small agencies as well. The problem might not be for those of us in the room in terms of employment, but think about how things will progress. If employment really happens only at the top strata, how do people get there? Now, I'll tell you what we're doing, and it's insignificant, I think, in the larger picture, but we've doubled down on our internship program, that we're going to really invest in doing that to try and make sure we're giving opportunities to entry-level people to come in and find their way and find that path. But really, the vulnerability isn't just about employment. You know, the risk, the very last on the list, the risk is being cut out of the picture. It means really just that disruption means that they don't need the people that provide some of those services because AI is suddenly doing the measurement. And AI is collapsing that value chain. So what AI is doing, it seems almost instantaneously, is they're doing strategy, content, distribution, measurement, all in the blink of an eye. And that is too tempting for people not to gravitate toward. That's a real disruption for measurement, but we're also losing control of the truth. And these last three, I think, work together. It's that zero-click reality that we all are facing that is affecting the loss of truth. Because what's happening is, and whether you want to see it from creators or artists, instead of the entire work being shared, they're getting snippets. I'll tell you, I feel like I've seen several different shows just from the clips I've seen on YouTube. I understand the characters, I get the plot, but I don't really see the work as an entirety. It's a different thing if we're talking about entertainment than if we're talking about measurement and what the work is. Because instead, what we're getting is the consumer or the client is getting the summation, the summary that's created by AI. And you're not even, it could be your research, it could be your work, it could be your subject, but you don't even have control about what that summary says or how it's put together. But it's being consumed and it's being accepted as the truth and reality. And it's that loss of control of truth that I think is so difficult. You know, last night, one of the things that John has said is that we're going to talk a lot about trust. When we start losing trust about what we're seeing, you know, it seems that AI provides tremendous opportunities and great capabilities and strength. But it seems like there has to be some repercussions that we're not seeing. Like I talked about people not coming in at the entry level or mid-level of the profession. So how do we have senior level counselors if there's not a path for people to start on that path? I don't know what the answer is, but it seems like there's going to be some repercussions and some fallout that we're not anticipating. Here are things that AI can't replace yet. Trust right in the middle of the list, but context, judgment. In crisis, we find, you know, these are the areas that we work with most, that clients count on us to explain to them why this is so important, or why these audience members are sensitive to these things. And AI is a great resource. And it does do some predictive work. And it's improving as well. But these are the areas where we are already counted on more strongly than ever. And when we talk about humanity, that emotional intelligence, or what the impact for people will be, that's an area for us now. And probably the most important is helping clients or helping consumers decide what really matters and what doesn't. And I go back to that loss of control of what is truth or what is reality and accurate when we don't even, if it's your research and it's your work, but you have no control or input even on how it's summarized, there's going to be some conflicts and problems. Things will go wrong. So I think the new value, what we need to work toward, are these more human elements. The context, the truth, judgment about what matters and what doesn't. These are the 5 strategic shifts that I think are really going to impact not just measurement and agencies, but culture and society to some extent. You know, it's moving from measurement to decision intelligence. It's really troubling when the summaries don't have input or any fact checking with the authors and the creators of what the content are to influence. And it really is an influence economy. And if we're not having that influence, if the people that are most knowledgeable about a subject aren't having influence on how it's being portrayed or shared, when the clips and the snippets might actually misrepresent things, there's going to be bad outcomes. And it's influencing those outcomes that are so important to us. You know, we used to have campaigns, and now it's going to be just a continuous stream. It's going to be constant consumption and need for data and information. And moving to rented data versus owned data is a big one. Also, looking at, it used to be that audiences were comprised of people, and we would segment and understand those groups of people differently. But now we have to understand that our audience isn't just human beings, that there are AI and other systems that are part of the audience. When we think about what's being put out there, it's not just that AI has allowed every single person to produce content at a speed that's been unimagined before. But now also there are bots that are creating. So there's so much content that's going to be out there. We've lost control of the accuracy of the truth of it. And we're looking at audiences that we have to consider that some of them are going to be algorithms and AI and not just human beings. And really, we have to think about things not just for what are indicators, what are the KPIs, but what affects the value of an organization, because that's where the scoreboard really is. We have to look at how we affect revenue, what risk is impacted, what are the reputational impacts of what we're doing and saying. And the future really belongs to not the person or not the entity that can communicate most, or not the one that can even measure communication best. It really is who can make communication most meaningful, who can make the communication matter most. And when we're determining what matters and what doesn't, which I think still has to be our role, and we can't allow that to slip away, that's where the future is, because people will count on our professions to guide that. So measurement has to remain indispensable. And the way to do that is through these shifts. Translate AI outputs into business decisions. You know, measurement needs to take much more of a strategic advisory role, not just providing the information, because now we have to put actually the results in context. Because I think more and more we're going to have consumers or clients that are going to look at maybe the data that we provide and alternate data and question which one is the truth, which is accurate, which is more meaningful or relevant to the people. And you all have done such a good job of being leaders in the areas of analytics and ROI and communication. The real opportunity, I would think, is for you to take that same role, to become the thought leaders, but for quality and ethics and context. Because those areas are going to become so much more clouded and confused with the volume of content that's coming out. And personally, this is an area that seems like a great need from our perspective, is taking earned media insights and how that can affect broader marketing efforts. Because the peso model that's been referenced, that earned piece is blurring more and more. And as journalism is eroded and as outlets change and become more fluid with the requirements of the marketplace, that's going to be an area where we're going to need help with. So the biggest opportunities, I would think, with AI, one, crisis intelligence systems, not just monitoring, because the truth is, where measurement is just documenting what has happened in the past, that's becoming less relevant. What our clients need, what consumers need, is really things that can help predict what the right next step is. Because regardless of the situation, that's what people are looking for. What is the next right thing to do, the next right step in the next right direction? Decision modeling is going to become more and more important. Subscription intelligence, the idea that it's not just discrete campaigns anymore, but a constant, unending flow. And I think probably the most important area, the one that the shift is most required, has to do with proprietary data. And I'll tell you, that's something that we've really focused on. It's the idea that you need to differentiate yourself by saying, you can't find this anywhere else. We are not just another source. AI can't replace us for those things. The way we've done this is, we call it Deveney systems. And it starts with, we're actually building a proprietary AI RAG system and AI agents to capture and use the 30 years of content that our agency has developed. But you can see that some things that we've done for 30 years, we have branded. Other things we're rebranding. So our strategic analysis and planning system, and it has been called that for decades, is Compass. But even minor things like the monitoring that we use and pull together is Signal Watch. So we've branded each of these to make it, to differentiate, to show that this isn't just what you can get from anywhere. It's not just off the shelf. And then they break down differently. So for example, with our media training, our media masterclass, we also do that just for crisis. We do it for executives. We do it in a purely virtual setting because the rules of engagement of interviews when you're doing it from your laptop or in your living room are different. It's a different approach. And we do it for chefs and bartenders as well. So we break them down a little differently. In branding, our branding work is brand core. If we're looking to evaluate or analyze it, it's alignment index. And then for an organization, branding is different. If they are an organization that is looking to be acquired, then we work with the brand on improving and evaluating its strength for that. And it's called Brand Core Deal Ready. Or if it's an organization that's been acquired by another, if suddenly two companies have come together, it's Brand Core One Entity. If there's been a crisis, Brand Core Reset helps the organization evaluate what they're doing and find out what adjustments they need to make with the new reality. Because after a crisis, suddenly a larger audience knows who you are, and what they know about you might not be what you want to hang your brand on. So we've really done this, and I think it's something that has to be done, making proprietary intellectual property something to differentiate, that this isn't something you can go to anyone with. You know, in my thank yous, I also want to include Muckrack. And I mention that to them because they provide services, but it's also Muckrack. You know, we know when we're using them what we can count on. That if we're having trouble, we can contact, you know, our person. That's the sort of thing that we have to do across the board. People need to know that what you're providing isn't just off the shelf, that there's a human connection that you're providing, that you, not only do you care, but you're informed about what their needs are. And I would say, in looking at measurement and AI, from the humble, limited perspective of a boutique agency owner, you can lead that future, but where you need to concentrate on is that strategic decision-making. You know, that strategy level that's so important that AI can't compete with you with. And focus on continuous improvement. And building credibility for not just the work you do, but how it's presented. And as I was going through this, I also thought, well, of course, this is also exactly what AMEC did through the principles: guiding strategic decision-making, supporting continuous improvement, building credibility for work. You've already done that for my profession, and now I think it's time that you also need to make sure that you're doing it for yours, because AI is going to not just create the disruptions that we can anticipate. We have to be confident that there's also going to be disruptions and problems that we haven't anticipated. There's too many things that are in conflict with it to go smoothly, and things never do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. I think Amelia has my mic, so I'm going to use this. Don't go too far. We have some questions.
Great.
I will take the first question. Liberties. You know, I think this is an important discussion, and I think as agencies, when you talk about campaigns, right, that's that hourly model. That's something, that project model that you all can work with. But you referenced that it's not a campaign anymore, right? Because it's that long tail of all of those efforts. How do you see that affecting the pricing model and the value proposition that agencies are able to offer so that our members can understand where we fit into that ecosystem? How are those products and services working for the model that you're facing, not the model that you used to have?
Yeah. There's going to be tremendous change with that, and we're seeing it already. One of the things that we're seeing is, and understandably so, our clients trying to see where AI can replace what we're doing. And there's an effort to do that. And frequently what they'll look at is the cost. Well, if we asked Deveney to do that, they would charge us an hourly rate, or there would be a project fee to it. And we can do this with AI. What we're seeing is that, fortunately so far, there have been 2 specific instances where that happened, and in both of those instances, it went very poorly on the client side. And I think it's also because, let's say we're going on a trip and the car breaks down. I might have all the tools that are needed, but Jonna, we're going nowhere if I'm the one holding the tools. You know, I might have the tools, but we're gonna have to walk, sweetheart. It's gonna be a long, hard walk. It's not about tools. It's about knowing which tool to use on which device, the experience to know it sounds like this, that indicates that. So from a pricing standpoint, we don't know whether it's going to be, you know, it being ongoing. Does that mean that we try and do some type of subscription, sir? Does suddenly retainer become subscription? How do you do that? It's one of those things. I know that there's going to be more disruption. There's going to be repercussions that come from this. So far what we're seeing is it's kind of like me with a good set of tools. The clients aren't able to do it really on their own. It makes sense that they're going to try, and I can see technology adapting so that they can do it more often. Where it's going to work most poorly is in crisis and in strategy and those upper levels. Where it's happening successfully is in the entry level and mid-level. Did I answer that?
You absolutely did. And I think that's an important distinction, right? Because I think there is this, and everyone in this room faces it in one form or another, there is this seduction of the tools, right? It's flashy, it's bright, it's the shiny thing. But if it isn't solving the problem, if it doesn't have the right operator's manual, it doesn't have all of the things that you need, it makes it a challenge. I want to ask, I'm going to take the next question and then we'll open it up to the audience. But you do a lot of crisis work. And I think that you're talking already about how that's the gap right now. But for this audience especially, let's pull back the curtain just a smidge and talk about why is it that when there's a crisis, all of a sudden, money doesn't matter. As opposed to in the planning and the preparing piece, like, is there something that we can do to help with that psychology that you face with those same clients of planning and being prepared and having those models and those systems in place so that they aren't spending 5, 10, 20 times that amount for an inferior mechanism when a crisis strikes?
So the obvious reason why budgets suddenly don't matter during a crisis is because the very top decision makers are feeling the pain and experiencing it. And so suddenly, but there's more opportunity there than that. Another thing that we see very frequently when we're working in crisis is we're able to create alignment more quickly. And it's not just because the top decision makers are, but we've worked with organizations where debates about alignment and things have gone on, and then a crisis happens, and I think it clarifies things. It's not just pressure, but suddenly people's priorities are different. And it's a real opportunity for measurement and for evaluation, because that's something we bake into it at the very beginning and say, we need to do this. You all are just well positioned. You should be very involved in crisis, because one of the toughest things is determining when is the crisis over. And when would you say a crisis is over? Does anyone have a good answer on that? An organization that's facing a crisis, when would you say, what's the sign that that crisis is over?
Hasn't lost my job yet.
Amen, brother. Amen. He said he hasn't lost his job yet. So good indicator.
As soon as you could be more proactive with storytelling again.
That is a great indicator. When suddenly you can start talking about non-crisis related issues and they're received by the community, and it's appropriate to do that. I'd say one of the best, it's when the public thinks that the crisis is over, which is really difficult for an organization to determine. But that's something that I think you all have tools and skills that are superior to do that. You suddenly can help us find the measure and the evaluation to do that. That's an area where I think there's opportunity growth, where it's needed desperately. And it changes so much from situation to situation. And again, I think that plays to some of your strengths.
Question from the audience. Amelia's here with the microphone. Yes, Asim Sood here in the left-hand side.
Thank you. You made a very interesting point about how we can differentiate ourselves with the AI using proprietary data. We in the agency world, from a measurement side, struggle a lot there because clients are not willing to give us their proprietary data so that we can analyze it. I wanted to ask you, in your profession as an advisor, how do you make that happen? Any example that you can share?
Sure. In a crisis situation, frequently, not only just proprietary information, but very confidential or sensitive information is something that has to be shared. And again, it's when the individual's hair is on fire, they're willing to agree to just about anything, but you don't want to wait at that point. I think it goes back to trust, which is something that John had mentioned. And how do we build trust with organizations? You know, I think it's our track record. For us, the way we get clients most often in the crisis situation is not necessarily that they've heard one of us speak at a conference, or it's a CEO that they know that went through something recommends it. So it's that network. And you all, the work that you do and the access that you have to data should earn you that track record, but it's how you can communicate that you're trustworthy. Trust and credibility, I think, are the two pieces that determine that. Credibility can be developed and proven and documented in things, and trust is such a softer piece, but it's becoming more and more and more important. For us, from our perspective, frequently that happens from a past client recommending to someone else. So it's really the network of past clients that refer to us. That I think that's where the trust to share proprietary or sensitive or damning information, because sometimes the crisis has to do with something truly unfortunate that happened that the public wasn't aware of.
Thank you, Asim. Another question from the audience? I want to ask a question, John. You do a lot of crisis work, and you talk about that network of CEOs. Can you name a couple of organizations that you've managed crises for? That put you on the spot too weird, but to understand then, how do you nurture some of those, past crisis situations so that you are still the first person that they think of with something new? I mean, because hopefully a lot of time has passed and they hope to never work with you again on it. So how do you nurture those relationships so that you are that first call?
So so we have 4 main practice areas hospitality, healthcare, higher education, and crisis. And so in the higher education field, I'm going to focus on that. We got a phone call from the president of Wittenberg University in Ohio about a crisis that they had. The police had identified that a serial monster that would abduct young men at gunpoint and take them to the woods and rape them, they thought was a adjunct faculty member at the college, and every news organization was zeroing in on them. The president knew of me from work that she had been at Loyola University, and then she went on to Rollins, and at Rollins, her chief of staff knew me from work I had done at university, and the chair of the board knew me from work we did with Ruth's Chris. So that's how we got there. She's now become kind of the go-to if your college or university is about to go under, you hire her and she'll save the day. So she's now brought us to 3 other schools. And for each of them, we've worked with her on crisis, and she's done a remarkable job saving it. So building that, within higher ed, I think it's people who have worked at universities where we've worked and the work has gone particularly well, as it always does. But it's a tough thing to do because you're dealing with trust, and that is such a, that's such a gut feeling. It's not just results are good. Because, or if I think about, when I met with several doctors, I was going to have surgery, I had surgery on my shoulder. It wasn't just tell me about their track record. It also was that human element of how you feel about it. So I think the network is important, but also being trustworthy, being stand-up, doing the right thing, looking for the right next thing, and making sure that your counsel is on par with that.
Yeah, I think that's critical. I mean, that, being at the right place at the right time to be able to have those networks is important, and then being able to have that trust and relationship with the person who knows that they can count on you is that piece, right? Because I think you talked about the gaps, and I think that's a gap, right? I think that's a gap that, when Asim's talking about how do we get that trust to get access to that so that we can deliver a more thorough analysis of what some of those signals are, of where some of these threats might be. It's a really critical part of the partnership that I know is a challenge because everyone's busy, and that isn't necessarily driving revenue for you in the moment, but boy, can it make a big change when you're looking at it on a broader cycle. And
then when suddenly your competition is this accessible, all-knowing, provide the data in an instant resource, it makes it muddies the playing field quite a bit.
John is the king of understatements, and we would really appreciate him for that. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, I will take the last one, and I know that your agency is a member of WorldCom. I know that you don't speak for all of WorldCom, but I think that that's an interesting network for the group to understand. What are some of the things that internally you're talking about through your WorldCom network that are challenges, that are from region to region and globally, because that's how you partner, right? I mean, I think for people who don't know, that's that network where if they have global business, they have a regional partner that they can bring on board for media, for crisis, for any of those elements. But what does that look like as far as, if you had your way, what are a couple of problems that you see and in that network that you see that are percolating and that are persistent that you wish could be solved, you hope could be solved, you think that there's probably some details and data potentially within this audience that can help solve for some of those challenges that you're hearing about?
So one thing I'd say is that across the network, and the network is diverse in that we have some really big agencies, and then we have small boutique agencies, and even with some sole practitioners I've worked with, everyone is looking for more data, more proof, more measurement, more evaluation to show their worth and their value. because the competition amongst ourselves is part of it, but technology is also making it so that we're being perceived as replaceable in several areas. So resources partners like Muckrack, tools that can help us evaluate and document our worth, can differentiate us, are crucial.
I think that's so powerful. And when we look at, the partnerships is the key word, right? I mean, I think something that you will enjoy over the next couple of days is you talk about that AI can't replace context. Rob Key, who's one of our board directors, is going to have a session on context engineering and the important role that that plays in kind of getting those good results. But I think looking at all of those pieces, and I think there is this, I'm not saying this to be hateful.
I love it already.
But I mean, I think that part about, we need more data, we need more, that's not I don't think that that's always the case. I think that there needs to be, and I think what we see broadly is there needs to be better interrogation of the data that you have to know what other data are there correlations, what other data can support or contradict that can help, agencies like yours bring more value. So it isn't, how do we all boil the ocean? I know. Get in our boats with matches. That's not the way,
No.
but really looking at that piece. And so I think that's an important element of bringing all of those pieces together. You talked about bringing interns in and kind of that gap. You have nieces and nephews who you adore. What are you recommending to them as jobs of the future?
They haven't asked. They haven't asked my advice, and I'm wise enough not to force it on them.
Because his sister would beat him.
Right. Something that you mentioned, though, brought up a lesson that I learned that I think is, we managed, as much as one could, Hurricane Katrina for the state of Louisiana and the city of New Orleans. And wow, it was amazing to see what people did. And everyday walk of life sort of things, the Cajun Navy was formed, so anyone with a boat would go out to try and help and save people. People were taking all their vacation time, coming down and cooking for, it was amazing what people did and how resilient people are. It's remarkable. I think we can do anything. The one thing we can't handle, the toxin that affects people most, is uncertainty. We just cannot handle uncertainty. And what I see moving forward is there's going to be a lot of benefits to AI. There's going to be a lot of advances. There's going to be improvements in things. But there's also going to be some problems that people will move forward not even knowing that they were there, and then suddenly there's going to be doubt, there's going to be distrust, there's going to be wholesale uncertainty about which way is up. And that's, I think, when we're all going to be needed even more. The uncertainty that's going to come from some of the repercussions, some of the shortfalls of technology replacing people. And I think one of the repercussions is it's going to replace people when they shouldn't. There's going to be problems that are created from that, and that's where we're going to be needed most.
Very powerful, to understand where that value is, to understand that the challenges that each of us are facing in business, other industries, connected and detached from our industry, are facing similar challenges, right? That's why these group conversations are so important, so that those who are collaborating, those who are working together, will be able to navigate that in a more meaningful way, because those signals will hit different areas, different regions, different people at different times. But when we work together, we can all be smarter and brave the path. So as this ground is moving beneath us, we're still more stable because we're able to hold on to the experiences of others. So round of applause for John Deveney for this.